Hello and welcome back to the Bottom Bins, and today we have a video discussing the transfer of Dominic Solanke from Bournemouth to Spurs. Now, as you all know, Oisín is our resident Spurs fan. Oisín, first off, just on the transfer, look, Spurs were looking for that replacement for Harry Kane. They probably have been from he left the club. Is it the right striker? Is it the right move?
I think with the length of time it took to get a striker in, I think we're going in the right direction. Of course, you could sign any player in the world and there could be a flop or there could be a star. Yeah. So I suppose the main thing is time will tell. This season, the next couple of seasons will tell if it's the right choice or not. Personally, I've seen a lot of sort of backlash on social media about it, and I've seen obviously a lot of good things about it. I was actually quite excited when I seen that we were linked with them.
Yeah.
The only thing, obviously, I would have liked it to be done sooner in the window, so he could have went the pre-season turn, gelled in sort of more over the summer. Like, you get 8 weeks there of sort of time to train and get to know your teammates. So he has only come in a week before the Premier League season starting. So the only negative I would have is the fact that it took so long. But at the same time, there was a short list of targets and they were heavily sort of watched and scouted for the last couple of months, couple of weeks, whatever it was. So if it took them this long, they've obviously put a lot of time and effort into the sort of player they want. So the choice they've made is Solanke. So if they see him as fitting Ange's system, then I'm for that.
And that's the thing, Oisín, there, like you just mentioned, there did actually seem to be a lot of backlash online. Now, like, I personally really like Solanke as a striker. I was, last season on the podcast, myself and Connor would have actually had some pretty nice things to say about Solanke. Yeah. Just from talking to the other lads as well at the Bottom Bins, there were a few boys in the group chat and stuff that couldn't really understand the move. And I think the biggest criticism of it, Oisín, is Ivan Toney was available for £40 million this summer. Yeah. I know obviously Brentford then got that the injury to the striker Thiago, which means they're going to try their best to keep a hold of Toney. But what do you say to things like, look, Toney's available for 40 million. Why not go for a striker who's proved it over maybe a greater length of time?
Yeah, I understand that argument. When you're talking about the length of time as well, obviously Solanke's had a bang-on season last year, 19 goals in the Premier League. Obviously had a couple of rusty seasons maybe before that. But the thing with Toney is, the thing I always link back to is, like, if Ange wanted him, I feel like we could have got him. But at the same time, we could have approached Toney already and he's rejected. Like, I don't actually know.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy on social media to say, oh, they could have signed him, or, oh, he's way cheaper. But we don't know the ins and outs of every single transfer or any negotiation, what's going on. I feel like Solanke was the main target. I've seen a lot of sort of high-class journalists saying he was the main target and they were working on it for a long time and they wanted to make sure it was the right fit, and they analysed up to 8 strikers. So they have chosen Solanke as that striker that they want, so I'm happy with that. Whereas, I mean, again, Toney is an amazing footballer, but you look back at some of his interviews last season talking about he wants to play at the top and he wants to play for Champions League teams and stuff. To me, if Tottenham came to him, I don't see why he would say he wants to play Champions League and stuff. Like, we're in the Europa League. So in all honesty, I'd say if we had any negotiations with Toney, he was probably more against coming to Spurs than wanting to come to them. Whereas Ange has said multiple times he wants players who want to play for the badge, who want to play for Tottenham Hotspur, the club. And then you move from there, people who want to be involved in the process of getting back to that top level Champions League and stuff. So it could have been a situation where he rejected us, or maybe the conversations on his behalf weren't as appealing to Tottenham as well. So that's the way I would look at it.
Yeah, and I do think that's probably the sensible way to look at it. I suppose, the biggest backlash that has come about Dominic Solanke, Oisín, is just that, last season he scored 19 goals in the Premier League. He was absolutely fantastic. He was undoubtedly one of the better strikers in the league last year. Put up better numbers than, the likes of Højlund at United. He really, really did have a good season last year. But he's played for Liverpool. He's played for Chelsea.
Yeah.
Last season, at 25 years of age, I think he was, or 24 years of age, like, it took him that long to sort of sit and establish himself. So would you be worried, Oisín, that coming in now to, again, a bigger club like Spurs, that maybe he struggles to settle? Or do you think, this is the right profile of player, he can definitely come in here and score goals for Spurs?
I 100% think he's the right profile. I think I watched him last season live. I was at Tottenham and Bournemouth, and anyone I've sitting beside or any of the thoughts I had was he is their only threat. And I know it's a smaller club and they don't have 11 amazing players, so he is going to stand out to a certain extent. But he was dangerous every time he got the ball. Yeah. He could turn and take men on. He could hold the play up. He could thread the passes through. Like, I felt like he was an overall, like, a complete striker. Like, everyone in the stadium was like, I wish Richarlison could do that or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I think when you link him to Richarlison, because that's who they're going to be battling for the striker position. Yes, Richarlison has a bit of flair about him and he works hard. Solanke works hard as well. They're both similar in that way. But when you're talking about link-up play and overall play, like, any time I watched Solanke last year, like, he doesn't just, like, he scored 19 goals, which is amazing, but he doesn't just score goals. And I think that's why that's the profile we were looking for, because of Kane, the assists he started to get in the last 2 or 3 seasons of Spurs, the link-up play, the passing. Yes, he's not in Kane's level whatsoever, and I'm not saying that. But I still see similarities in him. Again, from watching him live, was fit to hold off for Muro, Van de Ven, all that, was running Van de Ven down the line, like, things like that. I think is perfect because Tottenham want that high press, they want to win the ball high up, and I really think any ball in a box, Solanke will score. He's a good finisher, so I think he has all the play to go along with it, and he's probably more clinical than Richarlison as well.
Yeah, well, I would probably agree with you there. He probably is more clinical than Richarlison, to be honest. Look, I think, Oisín, you know, when we talk about the profile of player, and it's like you said, like, there probably are similarities to Kane there. Like you said, he's not on Kane's level as of yet. You know, we don't know. He could reach that. He could end up being one of the best strikers in the league, but, you know, it probably is the next logical step for him in his career to move up to a club like Tottenham, work under a manager like Ange, who probably has similar values to what Iraola had at Bournemouth. You know, similar style, similar sort of work ethics and stuff. Like, you've already highlighted how much he works defensively and how good of a presser he is. So, you know, do you think to yourself, look, that's going to be a seamless transition into Spurs? Is he going to be able to replicate that sort of form from day one? Will he be able to understand what Ange says from day one? Because, like you've already pointed out, he didn't get a pre-season with Spurs.
I think it's one of them ones, you always hope for the best when a new player comes in. I want to sit and say, oh, he'll be amazing, or he'll do this. Again, time will tell. But going by, like you said, you link it to Bournemouth, the play style, again, we are a better team than Bournemouth, but the play style of that sort of high pressure and winning the ball high up the pitch, again, I saw that live last year as well. Both teams do play in a similar way, and I just feel like if he can replicate the exact game he had at Bournemouth into Tottenham, he's going to get a lot more chances with us. So I don't see him flopping, to be honest. Like, I can't see anything else other than him actually performing and playing well. And you'd be a bit more worried if a player comes in from, like, the La Liga and only has a week training and stuff, all the language barrier and fitting in and stuff. Like, he's known the league for years now. He's played in the Championship, played in the Premier League, and I know he wasn't what he was sort of meant to be at Liverpool and Chelsea and stuff, but I think it was one of them ones where he was young, he was still adapting, he was still trying to find his exact style of play, and then there was just a lot of competition in the teams, and it just was one where he couldn't just get in.
Yeah.
I think
he was probably too young.
Yeah, the last couple of years has definitely done him the world of good. Like, you can see the player he's evolved into, but there's sometimes there's players that maybe have a good season, and in your head you're just like that's their peak, they'll never reach past that. Like, I think Solanke is so much more. Like, the last 2 seasons, you've just seen a completely, like, a massive transformation of a player. Like, he was on par with some of the best strikers in the league last year. Yes, he played for Bournemouth, he didn't get all the praise that he probably deserved, but very rarely there was a bad word said about him last year. It was always, like, he was so consistent last year, and he was their main player, really. So I don't see him flopping, to be honest, and I really hope he does perform for us. Like,
yeah, well, to be honest, like I said at the start of the video, like, I'm actually a big fan of Solanke. I think he's a really, really good striker, so I don't really have any worries. Just to touch on other clubs around the league, Oisín, quickly before we wrap the video up, United managed to get Ligt and Mazraoui through the door. Of course, that comes after the Lenny Yoro injury, which was a big knockback for United. No Highland for the start of the season either. So what do you make of those 2 deals? Right moves for Erik ten Hag, do you think?
I think they're perfect moves because they're players who know what the manager expects and wants from them. They've played under him before. I think De Ligt, it's one of them players where he is a top class player, but he still hasn't even reached what he was hyped up to be, but he's still playing well. I know the last season wasn't great with Bayern Munich, and he was in and out of the team, but, like, you don't captain Ajax at the age of 18. You don't go to Juventus. You don't play for Bayern Munich if you're a bad player. Like he's a very good player, and I think if he settles in the next couple of months really well, and again has a very close relationship with Ten Hag, I feel like he'll excel. And then Mazraoui as well, so versatile, loves to attack. Again, hasn't played a lot of football. He went through a stage where he was undroppable for Bayern Munich, and then he got dropped and stuff, and it was a bit of back and forth. I think he just needed a fresh start, and again, all players are hungry to play in the Premier League. He's still young, and from what I've seen of him over the last couple of years, he's still a very promising player. He hasn't reached the level that I think he can reach to, but them two together, the chemistry that they probably already have mixed in with Ten Hag and stuff, I think that if they gel well in the next couple of months, I can really see them pushing on.
Yeah, and I think, that just what you were saying about Mazraoui there, he played every game at left back for Morocco in the World Cup. So I think with Shaw being out injured now for the start of the season, that's going to be really, really important to United, because him and Dalot can both sort of interchange. They both like to invert. That's the way they want to play. So I'm sort of hoping that it does work out. And again, Oisín, with De Ligt, it's sort of a similar conversation as the one with Solanke. A lot of people looking at it going, this is a guy that has played for Juventus, didn't really see the best of him, played for Bayern Munich, but didn't really see the best of him. And yes, the transfer fee wasn't massive by any means. 45 million euro isn't a lot. But, do you reckon that he probably has another level to get to? Is the Premier League, is it the right move for him?
Yeah, 100%. It is another 2 levels, I think, to get to. Like, he showed it at the age of 18. He showed it in spells at Juventus and showed it in spells at Bayern Munich. I think the problem is consistency. I'm not calling him an inconsistent player because he's still young and he's still so much more to give. But I think the main problem was just consistency. He would have a 10 out of 10 performance midweek against Madrid in the Champions League, and then maybe score like an own goal or something the weekend, and then you would just see that form dip. Then all of a sudden it's back up again. You're like, oh yeah, that's the player that we saw a couple of weeks ago. Then it would die off. I think it's just about keeping consistent, and I think the perfect manager for him right now is Ten Hag, because I don't think that you would say he has no confidence or anything like that. Like, he still is a top class player, and when you see, like, he's not someone that you say, oh, get at him, he's rubbish. Like, he's still a solid player, but I think under Ten Hag and just that man management over the next couple of months and sort of breeding him into the team, I think he really needs that sort of close relationship with the manager. Yeah. I think in the last couple of seasons it was managerial changes at both clubs, and it just the whole club probably never really seemed to settle. But for a young player like that, who's maybe the expectations are so high for them, I feel like Ten Hag is just that perfect man management, will get him settled and sort of give him that consistency that he needs in his game. Yeah,
well, I'm hoping so. It looks as though the two of them are both going to play against Fulham in the opening game, which was good for United to get them in, signed and registered so they could do that. Oisín, as well then, looking at your rivals, Arsenal, letting Emile Smith-Rowe go for £30 million. He's away to Fulham. This was a player that showed plenty of promise. He was really a mainstay in the Arsenal team up until about 2 years ago when they really did kick on and started challenging for the league. But again, right move for his career. Is it maybe a step below where you would expect him to be playing at? Because, I thought for Arsenal and if you want to challenge for the league, having that squad depth is key and ideal. I just felt like they maybe couldn't afford to get rid of him.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because he was so good for Arsenal for a couple of years there, like you said, and obviously injuries and stuff, was very unlucky with injuries. Personally, when we were playing them, I hated when he got the ball because he is such a dangerous player. But I think that it's the perfect move for his career at the current stage, because with the injuries and just not getting a consistent run of minutes with Arsenal, he needed a fresh start. The only thing I was shocked about, though, that it was a permanent transfer.
Yeah.
I think a season-long loan in the Premier League would have been perfect for him, because you look at Arsenal, like you said, you need that squad depth. Players get older. I know Arsenal don't have an old squad by any means, but players get older. You need that sort of youth breeding in. I know Emile Smith-Rowe's not 19 anymore, but you need them younger players looking at the squad going, I can take his position in the next year or two, stuff like that. Like Smith-Rowe, I'd say, was still, when he moved to Fulham, was still saying in the next year or so, I'd say I could have gotten the Arsenal squad.
Yeah.
But it's I could have, not I'm going to.
Yeah.
Just with how Arsenal are playing at the minute, some of the players are undroppable. But I don't just... Well, as soon as I seen it, I just thought that's actually a perfect move for him. Fulham, again, they lost a couple of players there at the start of summer, and they are sort of in the middle of like a rebuild. But I think that's a player that can really transform their club. Yes, he's not a world beater by any means, but in pre-season already, he's got a couple of goals to his name and stuff. He's already settled in pretty well. I think, again, their style of play suits him really well, so I think he'll be a fan favourite the next year or so.
Yeah, no, I was very impressed with the fact that Fulham were able to, to get that business done, because it is, like, for them, that's a marquee signing, that they would see that as taking them to, the next level. And I'm sure they look at Smith Rowe as a player who will potentially be very, very important to keeping them in the Premier League, because no doubt, like, with the squad that they have, they probably aren't strong enough to not be in a relegation fight this year. And finally, Oisín, this is the last point we'll talk about before we wrap up. Zubimendi. Rejected Liverpool, seems as though he's staying at Real Sociedad. You're hearing sort of conflicting reports in the media. Some people saying the club put a lot of pressure on him to stay. Some were saying, that actually when he looked at Liverpool, the Liverpool project, he wasn't convinced. What do you make of it? It's a poor saga, ultimately for Liverpool this season, losing Klopp, new manager in Oran slot. We don't know what he's like. We don't really know how it's going to work out at Liverpool, but 0 signings in the transfer window. And folks, I'm not digging at Liverpool. I know it sounds rich coming from a Man United fan, but we'll have to report on it.
Yeah. It's a strange one. And again, I have a lot of friends who are Liverpool fans and they're not happy whatsoever, because you can't tell me that there's one manager in the world walks into any team and says, I'm happy with the squad, a brand new manager. They have their own thoughts, their own ideas of the way they want to play. You cannot tell me that every single one of Klopp's Liverpool players suits perfectly Arne Slot's style of play, because that's incorrect. And again, they're still a good squad, they still have very good players, and they're still going to be competing top 4, possibly for the title as well. I mean, it's a bit early to say that, but they're going to be in around the top 4, as they are every year.
They were there or thereabouts last year, to be honest.
So I'm very shocked, and if I was a Liverpool fan, I would be fuming as well, because a manager cannot come in and just go, I love every single player there, they're perfect for me, because that's not correct. And again, there's Fabio Carvalho gone as well at the start of the week.
Yeah,
a couple of people have sold already, so the squad's getting slimmer. And again, you look at injuries over the last year in the Premier League and stuff.
They struggle every year.
1 or 2 injuries for Liverpool this weekend could ruin them up until Christmas if it's a bad enough injury. And I know, obviously, fingers crossed, you don't say that about any team, but like, it can happen literally over the stupidest tackle ever. So it's one of them ones where Zubimendi himself, very good player. As soon as I seen it linked, all the boys would text me, perfect signing. It would be perfect sitting in that 6, winning the ball back, really good with the ball at his feet. What Liverpool need right now is a 6, a stopper, and they've missed that since Fabinho left. So I'm so shocked that, one, they didn't put enough effort into it earlier in the summer. I know the Euros and stuff were on, but still, you can get a move on if you really need a player in that area.
Well, we've been 4 weeks, we're 4 weeks after the Euros now.
And then the second point is, if they're going to go into the season without a signing, I don't know what's going to happen, because, like I said, injuries and the amount of games you play per season, like, there's so much rotation. Like, you look at Man City, we always talk about them, the rotation they have is ridiculous. And everyone wonders, why do they keep winning it? How do they do this? Like, the likes of Liverpool will be saying the same at the end of the season, but if you're going into a brand new season with a brand new manager with 0 signings, what else do you expect? That's not to say that his starting 11 won't be great and they'll not perform really well, but I think currently, looking at the squad depth, I don't think it's enough for what their aspirations are for this season. Yeah,
well, again, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. The squad depth now within the Premier League has become so important. Like, we don't just talk about starting 11s anymore. We talk about 15 or 16 players, and really that's what it takes, 15, 16, 17 players over the course of a season to go and win you the Premier League. But I think that's going to do it, folks, for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Please keep an eye out after this weekend's Premier League fixtures. We will have a roundup of match day 1 for you, so stay tuned for that one. Please check out our previous videos as well, and as always, please like, subscribe, follow, whatever it is the platform is asking you to do. Please go and do that. Thanks for watching, and keep it bottom bins.
Keep it bottom bins.